Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Assam's Himanta Biswa and UP's Yogi Adityanath are among the BJP's most prominent, most vocal and projected chief ministers today. And yet, these two chief ministers don't have what so far has been a necessary condition to reach high positions in the BJP, an RSS background. But despite that, these leaders have completely assimilated themselves into the Sangh culture, becoming more RSS than perhaps a lot of those who've come from the RSS background, and not allowing their distinct backgrounds to become a hindrance. This, in a way, the story of these two chief ministers in a nutshell tells us the story of the changing BJP RSS culture. The success of the RSS today is no longer in just hoisting its own leaders in top positions. It's about finding new and willing clones, like it has done in the case of these two chief ministers. It's no longer an absolute must in the BJP to have evolved from the Sangh ranks to be able to hold top positions. Now, make no mistake, it doesn't mean that the RSS and BJP are changing, or that the core of these outfits is changing, or that they're drifting apart. It merely means that BJP now is more pragmatic. It knows that as it expands into other territories, into newer territories, particularly territories which have not been organic to it, it can't rely on just this one trope of looking towards the RSS, and it has to find other leaders. So therefore, don't just look at the RSS now. Essentially, RSSize outsiders who come in. That's precisely what it has done, and what Yogi Adityanath and Himanta Biswa have quite willingly done. Just look at the trajectory of these two chief ministers. Yogi Adityanath in UP has, in a way, as my political editor DK Singh rightly argued, has become a role model of sorts for other BJP chief ministers, including veterans like Shivraj Singh Chauhan. So whether it comes to making the anti-cow slaughter bill more stringent, or whether it comes to introducing a population policy, or it comes to what seems to have become BJP's favorite pastime now, a love jihad law or an anti-conversion law, Yogi Adityanath has been at the forefront of setting the template for other BJP states and other BJP chief ministers. Of course, he's a star campaigner for the BJP. He, seamlessly weaves in the Ali versus Bajrang Bali kind of divisive conversation in his campaign speeches, which obviously the BJP laps up. He's literally a saffron-clad Hindutva brand for the BJP. Now, the bigger surprise is his counterpart in Assam, Himanta Biswa, because Himanta, remember, has learned his politics from the Congress. And he's been very close to former Chief Minister Tarun Gogoi, a veteran leader in his own right. And he has made this switch very seamlessly. So if Yogi Adityanath talks about protecting cows, Himanta Biswa is not going to be far behind and will have a bill to that effect. And if Yogi Adityanath talks about population control, so will Himanta. So all these policies are now being replicated from Uttar Pradesh in Assam, and all of these fit very well within the worldview of the RSS. The Assam Chief Minister had no qualms pushing for the Citizenship Amendment Act, even though it went against the very tenets of the ethnicity debate, the ethnicity conflict in Assam. He talks about the Jinnah legacy, and he talks about the fear of Assam, of Hindus becoming minorities in Assam. So really, he is following pretty much the trope that the RSS would want him to follow, even though he doesn't come from that sort of a background. Now, I know this is not absolutely unusual. We've had leaders like former Rajasthan Chief Minister Vasundhara Raje Scindia, and former Union Minister, veteran leader Sushma Swaraj, who also did not come from the Sangh, but they were more of aberrations than the norm. And there is something changing in the BJP, as we can see. Even other newer, recruits, imports like Jyotiraditya Scindia slowly assimilating into the RSS culture. And this reflects a paradigm shift in the BJP. There was a time when it was considered mandatory to have an RSS background if you were to reach the top echelons of power in the party, in the BJP, or even if you were taken in the BJP, you would have to have that one backing if you were to reach the very top. Now, my colleagues Shankar Animesh and Neelam Pandey did some number crunching in early 2020 to find that as many as 3 out of 4 ministers in the Narendra Modi government were rooted in the Sangh. They also found that 1 out of 5 BJP MPs associated with the RSS were appointed ministers in the Narendra Modi cabinet in 2019. Now, this figure is representative of a larger, unwritten but established rule in the BJP. Of course, there are several names, whether it's Piyush Goyal, whether it's Smriti Irani, whether it's S. Jaishankar, who don't come from a Sangh background but are ministers in the cabinet. But the stories of Himanta Biswa and Yogi Adityanath tell us something else. They tell us that not only is it possible to do well in the BJP, reach the top position, but also become favorite poster boys of the party, whether or not you're from the Sangh. And that's a very important paradigm change. The BJP, it reflects a pragmatic BJP which understands the limitations of sticking to, being a part of the Sangh cadre compulsory, which understands that expanding into new territories means it has to do so with an open mind as far as leaders are concerned, and it has to assimilate outsiders, and instead of looking towards insiders who belong to the RSS, it has to get these outsiders and RSSize them, as I've said earlier. I had once argued in an earlier column that Himanta Biswa has everything it takes to be the next Amit Shah for the BJP except the RSS. But looking at the way things are going and looking at how BJP is changing, don't be surprised if you find both Yogi Adityanath and Himanta Biswa getting important national roles in the party at some point in the future. That might not come as a surprise given how things are changing. For more, you can log on to our website, theprint.in, to read my column, Politics.